Isabella Sterling's arrival on the Amalfi coast began exactly the way she'd scripted it for her television audience. Sunrise water glittering below paper-white cliffs, fishing skiffs bobbing like toys, and a breeze perfumed by lemon groves. Season 4 of her show, The Nomad Kitchen, would open with her signature entrance, 1 foot on the dock, 1 hand raised in welcome, a copper sauté pan flashing in the sun. The viewers would fall in love all over again with the myths they told themselves about Italy, and with Isabella herself, the celebrity chef who combined American flash with inherited Calabrian roots. But reality, she quickly learned, didn't care about scripts. Because the moment the cameras switched off after that first glorious take, Lorenzo Bianchi, a food critic so powerful that a rumored frown of his could bankrupt restaurants, strode toward her holding what looked like an ancient leather-bound ledger. "Chef Sterling," he said, voice like gravel rolled in olive oil. "This is my taccuino. Every meal, every drink, every impression that will shape my column begins its life here protected while I'm on set. Per favore, you want me to babysit your diary?" She tried to sound amused, but his expression stayed granite severe. Isabella accepted the book. The leather was warm from his hand and smelled faintly of espresso grounds. A tiny brass clasp kept the pages shut. "I've misplaced it only once," Lorenzo said. "Florence, 2009. The fallout lasted years." An assistant director yelled, "Call times." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed, guarded. Then he pivoted on oxblood locusts and strode toward makeup. Isabella slipped the diary into her canvas tote beside her prepped knives. Cameras rolled, drones hummed overhead, and the first segment, her riff on Scialatelli with sea urchin, went flawlessly. When the director yelled cut, Isabella reached instinctively for the tote. The diary was gone. She upended knives, tasting spoons, and a bundle of Amalfi lemons. No diary. Her throat constricted. Lorenzo was famous for demolishing egos with a single paragraph. Losing his tactino on the very set where he'd soon be critiquing her episode was sabotage she didn't need. A quiet cough came from behind, a hesitant sound that didn't match the bustle of techs striking lights. "Is everything all right, Signora?" asked a young man in a striped apron dusted with frost. He pushed a wheeled cart topped by silver canisters engraved with blooming iris. Across the chest of his apron, blue cursive read, "Gelati di Matteo." "I lost something," Isabella muttered. The vendor offered a shy smile. Curly black hair, sun-bitten cheeks, eyes the color of the Tyrrhenian just after a storm. "Gelato helps many problems, even lost ones." Isabella almost laughed, then noticed the flavor label scrawled in chalk. Esfusato lemon, pistachio orange blossom, black fig with walnut brittle. "I'm partial to pistachio orange," she confessed. He dipped a small spoon, passed it to her, and she let the cold sweetness dissolve on her tongue. Roasted nut, bright blossom, and sea salt. A perfect Amalfi moment. A moment that crashed when Lorenzo Bianchi erupted from a makeup trailer, a linen jacket billowing. "Chef Sterling," he bellowed. "Where is it?" 30 crew heads swiveled. "Matteo," Isabella said quietly. "Please stay close." The gelato vendor parked his cart. Lorenzo stomped across electrical cables. "My taccuino you promised." "I set it in my bag," Isabella said, voice low. "During the segment someone took it." Silence spread like spilled oil on water. The producer, Claudia Marchisci Sharpbob, sharper clipboard, stepped forward. "Everyone free. No one leaves set." She signaled the security lead. Lorenzo thrust a trembling finger toward Isabella. "You are responsible," Isabella inhaled. "And I will find it. Claudia, give me 1 hour before you call the police. Let me solve this without headlines." She couldn't afford tabloids shrieking that her set had swallowed Lorenzo Bianchi's sacred book. It would overshadow the entire season. Claudia's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "See, 1 hour." She ordered gates locked. Matteo, still beside his cart, cleared his throat. Chef, perhaps an outside perspective could help. My uncle is the town constable. I've seen a theft or two. Isabella stared. The suggestion sounded ludicrous. She, a Food Network star? He, a gelato peddler? But desperation stripped pride swiftly. All right, walk with me, Matteo. They moved between equipment cases, glittering with dew. Seagulls cawed overhead. You noticed anything unusual? Isabella asked. Matteo tapped his chin with a tasting spoon. During your cooking segment, there was that brief power dip. The cameras ran on battery, but the main lights flickered. Everyone looked toward the gaffer's truck. Isabella remembered. A shadow had swept the set, a cool hush like an eclipse. She'd assumed a cloud crossed the sun. Also, Matteo continued, your tote smelled of espresso, very strong. Because the diary reeks of it. He shook his head. Stronger, fresh grounds, not dried pages. Isabella's pulse kicked. Someone could have used coffee to mask their own scent while reaching for it. She scanned the crew clumps. Who had espresso? On Amalfi mornings, the better question might have been, who didn't? But she recalled a particular stainless mug perched beside a monitor. Victor, the lanky Ukrainian camera operator, caffeine addict, who bragged he never slept more than 4 hours. And Victor had stood near her tote to capture a low-tracking shot. Let's talk to Victor, Isabella said. They found him coiling cables. Where were you? Isabella asked. During the power glitch? He laughed. Trying not to faceplant. Lights went disco. I kept rolling. Why? Matteo sniffed theatrically near Victor's shoulder. The cameraman arched a brow. You smell the sea? I smell roasted espresso, Matteo said, pointing at a dark patch on Victor's khaki sleeve. Oh, Victor grimaced. Spilt my doppio earlier when the cart jolted. Isabella leaned closer. The stain's perimeter glimmered faintly green. Not coffee at all, but pistachio gelato melted into fabric. Matteo noticed the same thing. His eyes lit. He scraped the surface with a fingernail and tasted a dot. Pistachio orange. Mine. Why is Matteo's gelato on your sleeve? Isabella demanded. Victor's face reddened. Because someone bumped me near the cart. My hands were full of camera gear. I brushed their cone. Isabella folded arms. Who? Giulia, the prop stylist. Giulia Ricci was the show's queen of tablescapes, from antique plates to linen runners. She also nurtured a crush on Lorenzo, flirting whenever he deigned smile. Isabella pictured the stylist near the gelato cart earlier, fussing over a napkin arrangement. Stay reachable, Isabella told Victor. She and Matteo strode toward wardrobe racks, where Giulia ordered interns to steam chef jackets. Giulia flipped auburn hair as they approached. Chef Sterling, love the scarf today. Thanks. Where were you during the lights flicker? Setting up the critics' tasting table? White plates, cobalt trim. Why? Matteo offered a spoonful of his lemon gelato. Taste? Juliet licked it politely. Delizioso. Matteo glanced at her hand. Interesting manicure, he said. Julia's nails were painted pistachio green, except the index finger, chipped at the corner, revealing peach polish beneath. A tiny crust of something pale speckled her cuff. Isabella pinched the fabric. A sugar grain. Spill anything recently? Juliet's smile thinned. Okay. I tried Matteo's pistachio orange earlier. Happy? I'll pay for dry cleaning. Did Lorenzo Bianchi's diary also get a taste? Isabella asked. Giulia recoiled. Excuse me? Isabella nodded at Matteo, who stepped aside smartly. Giulia, Lorenzo entrusted me with that diary. Now it's missing, and I'm responsible. Where is it? I don't know. Tears pricked her eyes. I'd never hurt Lorenzo. He meant as me. Isabella softened but pressed on. Did you see anyone near my tote? Julia sniffed, fighting emotion. I noticed Enzo Rossi lurking at craft services. He isn't crew, is he? Enzo Rossi, Neapolitan bad boy chef with a swagger that ran on Instagram fuel, happened to be Isabella's scheduled rival guest for episode 2. He'd arrived early, uninvited, claiming to scope locations. They had history. Enzo once accused her of stealing his limoncello glaze idea. Back to Claudia. Where's Enzo right now? The producer consulted her headset. He borrowed a speedboat to film Drone B Brawl of the Coast. She locked eyes with Isabella. And he's due back in 20 minutes. A speedboat could quickly ferry a diary far away. Isabella pictured Enzo flipping through its pages, harvesting Bianchi's judgments to sabotage competitors or blackmail restaurants. We need him detained at the pier, Isabella told Claudia. The producer dispatched security to await Enzo's return. Matteo offered Isabella a cone. Keep blood sugar steady, detective. She smiled, but her stomach churned. If Enzo stole the diary, he still needed the power flicker as diversion. Could he hack the gaffer truck? Enzo's more sauté pan than circuit board, Matteo said. But sabotage can be outsourced. Which brings us back to Victor. Isabella exhaled. He had motive. Rumors say Enzo promised him a job on a Madeira travel show if he fed footage. A cry cut through the air. Barca in arrivo. The speedboat knifed turquoise water toward the quay. Enzo stood at the bow, hair whipping, looking every inch the Mediterranean pirate. Isabella and Matteo hurried down the stone steps, security flanking. Enzo disembarked with exaggerated courtesy. Ah, Chef Sterling, I captured stunning drone shots, gulls chasing the boat, sunlight on waves, Claudia interrupted. Hand over the duffel. Enzo's grin faltered. What is this? Security unzipped the duffel. Batteries, gimbal, snorkeling mask. No diary. Enzo raised his hands theatrically. Accuse me of drowning a squid, maybe, but journals aren't my taste. Isabella's hope deflated. She noticed Matteo scanning nearby fish crates stacked for morning market. He walked over, sniffed. Anchovies, mullet, squid. He paused at a wooden crate stamped Vesuvio Pesce. Chef, look. A damp corner of leather protruded beneath crushed ice and splayed sardines. Isabella yanked it free. Lorenzo's tacuno, clasped, corroded by brine, but intact. Security seized Enzo, thinking diary plus boat equaled guilt, but Matteo shook his head. The crate smell is wrong. Not diesel and salt alone. There's bergamot cologne. Isabella inhaled the leather. Subtle citrus, masculine. Enzo smelled of violet soap. Bergamot belonged to Lorenzo Bianchi himself. She stared toward the cliffs where the critic now paced, foam glued to ear. Matteo whispered, Why would the victim's scent mark the hiding place? A sudden puzzle piece clicked. Lorenzo had insisted Isabella guard his diary. Moments later, it vanished. What if the disappearance wasn't theft, but theater? They walked toward Lorenzo. Isabella brandished the wet diary. Looking for this? He ended his call slowly. You found it. Bene. No gratitude laced the tone, only calculation. You planted it? Isabella accused. Crew members edged closer. Lorenzo lifted a brow. Explain. It disappears on live set, she said, voice carrying. Your reputation spikes. Headlines, Bianchi's priceless diaries stolen. You become mythic. After we scramble and fail, you miraculously recover it and pen a dramatic column on the panic your words incite, Matteo added. You doused it with your own cologne, so discovery still traces to you, preserving legend of intimate bond between critic and book. But you miscalculated, Isabella continued. You thought we'd chase human suspects, never fish crates, except Matteo's gelato taught us sense, and his uncle's constable stories taught him about misdirection. Lorenzo clapped slowly, sarcasm echoing. Compelling narrative, chef, but I was in makeup. Where the power flicker didn't reach, Isabella said, yet the timeline of the lights matches nobody's testimony cleanly. You orchestrated the outage. The gaffer's your cousin. I heard your phone call just now. He dimmed the supply for 10 seconds, while your stylist Julia placed the diary in the fish crate you'd prepped with bergamot. Gasps swept the gathering. Julia stuttered. No! He told me to grab fresh parsley. I didn't know what I was carrying. Isabella faced her. You thought it harmless prop work for Lorenzo's grand entrance? Julia covered her mouth. Tears brimmed. Lorenzo's mask slipped, fury crinkling his fine wrinkles. You dare lecture me on theatrics? Your whole show peddles fantasy, celebrity, chef rescuing towns with olive oil. I simply provide drama equal to the cuisine. And throw innocent people under a boat propeller while you're at it, Isabella said. You would have let Claudia call police. Publicity has appetites, he hissed. Matteo stepped forward, apron fluttering. Fame without integrity leaves a bitter aftertaste, signore. Lorenzo scanned faces, camera operators, grips, extras, every one of them staring. His reign derived from awe. Now the tide turned. He straightened shoulders. I'll be in my hotel. If you print lies, my lawyers feast. He strode off into blinding noon. No one moved to escort him. Claudia exhaled shakily. Isabella, we need proof before we accuse publicly. Matteo raised the diary. The inside cover, water-warped, bore fresh handwriting. Episode 1 Amalfi. Gelato vendor delivers worthy assist to floundering host. Potential heart subplot for article? Lorenzo had been drafting the story in real time, counting on the ruckus as content. Claudia read silently, lips tightening. He admits manipulation in his own ink. She pocketed her phone. Legal will handle. For now, we resume production. Crew dispersed like schooling fish after a predatory shadow passes. Isabella sagged against a coil of rope. Matteo offered lemon gelato. She accepted. Thank you, she said, licking bright citrus. You saved my season. He grinned. Just a vendor, remember? Not anymore. How do you feel about guest starring? We'll film a segment on artisanal gelato and detective instincts. Matteo laughed. My cart and I are at your service. Later that afternoon, cameras rolled again. Isabella stood at a seaside counter piled with Amalfi lemons, pistachios from Bronte, and a stainless canister of fresh cream. Matteo faced her, scooping fragrant sorbetto for the audience across the lens. This morning, Isabella told the camera, Matteo and I learned that flavor can solve mysteries. The secret lies in paying attention to aromas, to textures, to people. She glanced at Matteo, gratitude warming her gaze. And to the friends you don't expect. Matteo poured a ribbon of olive oil over sorbetto. Gelato, like life, he said, is best when shared. Behind them, the sea glittered. Off to the side, a legal liaison handed Lorenzo Bianchi a form revoking his appearance release. The critic, realizing his performance days on this set were over, boarded a taxi bound for Naples. Neither Isabella nor Matteo looked his way. They were busy crafting stories of their own, one sweet enough to remember and, unlike stolen diaries, far too generous to hide.